nonstop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
You held him to 20 points, man. You gave us a chance at the end. But I got 3 words for you. You like that?
There it was right there. That was, I don't know if you guys saw it last night. That was live reaction last night. Kirk addressing the Vikings locker room after signing another ironclad contract extension that takes him through 2023 to be the Vikings star. They're all very excited. Very excited to have.
That was Kirk talking to Phil Mackey and Phil only. You like that?
I have been, as we did this on Mackey and Judd. By the way, this is Purple Daily, daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. And if they're going to do it in the next 2 seasons, it will be with Kirk Cousins. And I'm sure we will talk about that on today's episode. But this whole thing is presented by our friends at, well, 2 places, Surly Brewing Company, and also today TCL, one of the world's best-selling consumer electronics brands. New lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution, all at an affordable cost. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. So just going through some more of the responses via social media and email in the aftermath of Kirk Cousins signing the contract here.
Yep. Let's hear it.
This is from Aaron, Mackey, and Score North in shambles, all caps.
Going out of business sale, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything must go.
I got a
Judd's
mic right here. I got headphones. They're used, so I'm going to cut you a deal on them. A good deal, too. I'm going to give you a really good deal.
What about those empty prop cans of Surly? Are we going to be, can we give those to people?
I'm going to sign those, auction them off.
Mob Cage 12 says, seeing you guys lose your minds brings me unimaginable joy.
Nice.
Okay, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Justin on Twitter, his avatar is of Kirk Cousins with laser vision, by the way, and he says, "I hope at Phil Mackey is ugly crying right now." Our former friend, I don't know how we call him a current friend if he's tweeting stuff like this. Dave in South Carolina, former OG regular on Vikings Fan Line,
every day.
He said, "You are so lucky your company is family owned." Not our family, it's the Hubbard family.
This old guy's own Score North. This is good news.
You are one of the most ridiculous media members I have ever listened to.
So he's just talking to you?
Well, I think he's talking to
all
me in this context. And then Kirk Cousins' season jumps into the DMs and says, "Bleep you, suck it."
Yeah.
Dancing on your grave. So
it's my
little victory lap for the Cousins Crusaders.
Last night I got on and did that.
That was your Kirk Cousins
Judd
season
called
on
me.
Twitter.
Bex, how do I set up a Twitter account again?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe someday, instead of the Kirk Crusaders victory laps being about ironclad guaranteed contracts being the victory, or Matthew Stafford winning a Super Bowl being the validation of the victory, maybe the celebration can be about the Vikings actually going deep in the playoffs with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. That's my one wish here, is that is the next Cousins Crusader celebration, not these like paper celebrations for him putting $70 million into his bank account over the next 2 years. But just my thoughts.
How does a show whose stated goal at the beginning or end of each show is that the Vikings win a Super Bowl championship before we die, how do we become so polarizing regarding the quarterback?
It's because there are, I don't know what percentage it is, but there's a lot of people that feel like he is the centerpiece for Super Bowl success, and that everything else around him is the problem, and that we have it. And it sucks because usually we fight and debate over 8 years on this show. It just so happens that on this one issue, which is this huge issue, we tend to agree. So it tends to be like us against the Crusaders together, arm in arm. I do have a feeling that we're gonna disagree quite a bit, sort of on the next several months. But I think there's a lot of people that. And by the way, the Vikings ultimately, now that we've all had 18 hours to sort of sleep on this, think on this as we record this day after episode of Purple Daily, the Vikings agree. The ownership, Kwesi, my sense is, and my feeling is, ownership drove Kevin O'Connell over Jim Harbaugh. That if it was just a Kwesi decision, he loved himself some Kevin O'Connell, but that Harbaugh was the number one. And that ownership is driving the Kirk Cousins thing here. That, hey, listen, it's too risky to move off. We've seen the Christian Ponders. We've seen the Tavares Jacksons. It's too risky to move off of him. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it's ownership more than front office, but they're all aligned ultimately. They're all responsible for decision. So ownership, Kwesi, Kevin O'Connell have said Zimmer was a problem. Rick Spielman was a problem. The roster and the development need work. But the one thing that we know wasn't a problem was Kirk Cousins. That's what they are saying.
Right. And they found a coach who definitely 1,000%, I think, does agree with that statement. I think O'Connell genuinely wanted the opportunity to work with Kirk. I think as a whole, there's a fracture in the building on Kirk. But I do think that O'Connell essentially told the Wilfs and the people who made the decision that he could work with Kirk and get the most from Kirk. And so, you know what? Now we sit back and find out. And this will actually, I am very interested. I am very interested to see just how much of this is to blame on Mike, just how much of this potentially, I guess, falls on Rick. And if these guys can now take Kirk, who you know, history tells us in Washington, he didn't exactly go on deep playoff runs there. If they can finally get Kirk in an offense and to a point with a team that they can make a deep playoff run. And by deep, I mean conference championship or Super Bowl.
So now that we've all been able to digest this a little bit, what are your main takes right now? Just hit me with your gut takes off of this after sleeping on it for a night.
So my main take is very simple. They got the salary cap hit down. Because that was, to me, every day that I woke up and got prepared to talk about Kirk Cousins and the Vikings on this show since the season came to an end, my main thought, the thing going through Judd's brain, has been that cap hit is unbelievably high. They got it down. It's not at a great place, but it's at a pretty good place.
Yeah, it's much more manageable.
I described it as fair. And so that's the thing. They now have the ability to make moves to build this team out and win now. Can they do it? I don't know. But as far as Kirk goes, I actually will be very fair in saying for 2022, the cap hit now can at least be tolerated and is palatable, which before last evening, it no question was not.
I think what's interesting to me about the contract is they put these two void years at the end of it, right? In 2024 and 25, with a $12.5 million cap hit in 24, which will eat up about 5% of the cap as it stands. And then there's a 6.2 prorated bonus on the 2025. So I'm interested on how they went to the negotiation table with Kirk and said, hey, we're going to put those two void years in this contract. And then I'm sure Kirk also went back and said, all right, then I'm getting a no trade clause. If you're going to put the void years on the back end of this contract, you are giving me a no trade clause for the next 2 years.
I will help you guys with what you're trying to do, which is bring this cap hit down. But I need some assurances that I know where I'm going to live for the next 2 years, right?
And Kirk for 2022 also got in straight salary a $5 million bump.
Yeah, so he got
five.
He was going to get all this money anyways, but he gets $40 million instead of $35 million in just cash, right?
In 22, exactly right. So
I think $55 million of the 70 guaranteed is going to be paid out within the next calendar year because of the bonus, I guess, in a year from now.
Yes, sir.
I think my main takeaway is that the Wilfs are paralyzed by the fear of being the Lions, the Jets, the Browns, etc. That moving off of Kirk Cousins is wildly risky because you could fall into this organizational tailspin that, quite frankly, the Vikings in 60 years have never fallen into. It's funny because and they've been the owners for a quarter of that time period, and that's like they don't have enough confidence in themselves to potentially take a step back, reset, and really make a push with a ton of cap space and a blank slate at quarterback. The blueprint that usually works more often than other blueprints is to have a quarterback on a rookie scale contract. Like, they didn't even want to explore that. That is no longer a conversation until 2024, right? Now, could I see them drafting somebody maybe in 2023 going into the last year of Cousins' contract, and now Cousins is the bridge guy? Absolutely. And they're in a better spot financially to make that happen too. But I think the Wilfs see 8 to 9 win seasons as relevance, and they'll do anything they can to run it back and maintain that relevance. And I'm using relevance in air quotes here Because I don't think 8 to 9 wins is, to me, relevance is you're winning playoff games. You're going to the playoffs more than once every 4 years, right? Or 3 years. You are competing for Super Bowls on a more regular basis than the Vikings have. And they look to protect that perceived relevance at the expense oftentimes of going for a higher ceiling and making a bigger, more aggressive push. So, they feel more comfortable connecting Kevin O'Connell to Kirk Cousins than hiring Jim Harbaugh because there might be risk. Oh my God, if it blows up in our faces here. And the gamble here is Kirk Cousins, throughout his career, has been the gravitational pull toward 500. And so they are gambling. It's funny, like they see the gamble as moving off Cousins. And I'm going to put Kwesi in this mix too because ultimately he's the one that redid the contract. But to me, the gamble is looking at a 34-year-old guy and saying, yeah, for 10 years, or if you want to split hairs, for 7 years as a full-time starter, he was a part-time starter for 3 years, right? It really is everything else around him. He really isn't the common denominator for, an 8-win average over that period. It is everything else around him. And we, Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, are going to be the saviors, the white knights, to bring Kirk Cousins to the level that he deserves to be at, but he's been held back by coaching and offensive line and defense and more bad coaching, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're really gambling that Kevin O'Connell can unlock another level to Kirk's game in some of these key moments, against pressure, et cetera. And they're arguing and gambling that Kwesi can flawlessly build out the rest of the roster, not in 3 years, now. Like right now in 2022 and 2023, pressed up against the cap.
Yes.
So it is a big gamble, and it does potentially, put you in the same mediocrity bin that you've been in for the majority of the Wilf ownership for 16 years.
Yes, they are essentially saying, as far as I can tell, that Rick Spielman actually built a pretty good team, and that it was Mike's fault they didn't win, which begs the question, why was Rick fired when the plan was to keep him and bring in a GM and make Rick like the president of football operations? We don't know the answer to that question. The other thing that this does, you guys, is this creates a very interesting scenario, and it's sort of without going hot takey here, it starts to put the clock on Kwesi. He's got a 4-year contract, okay? So like they're banking on win now. So this is not you've got 4 years and then we'll go sign you again. This is we think that we can win now. But the voidable years in Cousins' contract to me become interesting in the sense, because I think as of right now, the expectation is unless things go great, that Kirk won't be around in 2024 and certainly 25. But what that does is that says we think that Kwesi can win right now and O'Connell with Kirk for 2 years. We then potentially replace Kirk by drafting a quarterback who's so dirt cheap that the cap hits that are in the voidable years of Kirk's contract will mean nothing to us.
Yeah.
So like this creates a really interesting expectation, I think, because I was at this point, 2022 reset, 23 start to pop, right? And like 24, 25, let's go. They're saying, no. 22, 23 Kirk years, young quarterback then, and we keep going. So it's a really interesting move. And to me, the void years scream young quarterback, successful, starting, and then Kirk's gone, but you don't really care.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and they are just because of those void years, they're in a better spot with his contract in these next 2 seasons. We always kind of talk about that magical threshold of going back to the early 90s, no team has won a Super Bowl with one player making more than 13% of the team's salary cap. And the way that it's projected right now with this year's cap and next year's cap, Kirk is at 15% this year and 16% next year. So it's much more within the reasonable range of, okay, you could build a roster out around him and elevate his game. Like it's, but now you're paying for him when he's not here with dead cap money. But I think another question we should explore here, and this is going to involve some steam that we've caught wind of. That's right, just a little steam.
Reckless speculation.
Why didn't the Vikings trade Kirk Cousins? I think that's one of the big questions here, because there are multiple reports that the Vikings received multiple offers from multiple teams, We know that the Colts were having discussions. We know the Panthers kind of laughed it off, quote unquote, but there were discussions about a Kirk Cousins trade happening throughout the past several days. This offseason on paper looked like the perfect opportunity to leverage the quarterback desperate teams that are out there. The Colts being one of them. The Browns have made it pretty public that they're not too keen on Baker Mayfield long term. But like there was such a wide gap between the supply and the demand for quarterbacks that if you were going to move on from Kirk, that you can get something from somebody, right? And they chose not to accept those offers. And so here's my question off this. Let's just say theoretically that the Cleveland Browns offered 2 second-round picks and 1 year of Baker Mayfield. Okay? And I bring this up hypothetically, theoretically, potentially from some steam that I have heard and that Judd has heard. Some very specific steam. Cleveland Browns say, all right, Kevin Stefanski had a great year with Kirk Cousins 2019. Together they went to the second round of the playoffs and got Kevin Stefanski a head coaching job in the NFL. He's better than Baker Mayfield. He's less volatile. He's not going to be chirping to media members on Twitter midweek. He's going to help calm the waters here a little bit. 2 second-round picks in Baker Mayfield for Kirk Cousins. Would you guys have turned that down?
Okay, I think this partially depends on the question being you guys, because no, personally, no. And just to be clear on Baker, he is in my opinion, placeholder. I'm not taking him and like signing him to an extension. I'm not excited about that. I'm taking him as a favor. I probably would have asked for a first round pick too, but anyway, but given the direction that I personally wanted this franchise to go, being the Vikings, I would have said yes, because that's 2 very high draft picks. And again, I was and continue to be in my plan all in on the 2023 quarterback draft, finding my guy there. Because what the Vikings are basically saying right now is we want to be competitive enough that we are going to be nowhere near being able to pick a quarterback in 2023 high. And we could make a trade, but we're not exactly accumulating assets to do so. So anyway, yes, I would have, but I would have moved on from Kirk personally for several reasons. 1, the cap hit. That's down now. 2, and I've talked about this for a long time, the intangibles or lack thereof. I don't think he is a winning player. That's my opinion. After watching Kirk and having been around him
on a Super Bowl
in
level,
this
right?
business, I think he is a winning box score. I mean on a playoff basis. So I'm talking before you ever get to, if I thought he could get you to a Super Bowl and I was concerned, I would roll the dice, 100% Phil. What I'm saying is I think that Kirk is a big-time box scorer. Statistically, he can put up great stats. I think he can get you to the playoffs, although if you were to debate me on that, I might now lose that debate. But I don't think that he is the winning component at the most important position in sports. So, long answer, shorter, yes, I do that trade.
Dex?
I would do that in a heartbeat. Baker Mayfield is exactly what Judd said. He's the placeholder. And even though he was horrible last season, I mean, he had an injury to his non-throwing shoulder, but he was just a shell of himself. I can get down with Baker Mayfield as that placeholder. I wouldn't sign up for more of Baker, but I can get down with Baker at $19 million and somewhere between the quarterback that he was in 2019 and 2020, which is a average starting quarterback who is not horrible and doesn't necessarily shipwreck you, but he's a game manager. He has weapons in Cleveland. You can make a case Cleveland's weapons on offense were very similar to the Vikings' weapons on offense. So I would have done that trade in a heartbeat if I was Kwesi.
This is really interesting. 2 second-round picks. If your goal would have been a reset year and then load up on ammunition for the 2023 draft, it would have given you 6 picks in the first and second rounds between the 2022 and 23 drafts, giving you the ability to move up if you need to. Trade back this year to load up on picks for next year to have a better shot at a quarterback.
Yep.
So I would have leaned toward doing it as well. So another question off this. How would you guys feel, again, hypothetically, theoretically, okay, if Kwesi would have done this deal, but the Wilfs stepped in and said, ooh, if we're going to move on from Kirk, it's got to be for a linear upgrade. It cannot be for a step back at that position. How would you feel if the Wilfs got involved? Again, hypothetically.
Considering I was told a year ago by sources that Rick Spielman, Rick, of all people, wanted to shop Kirk Cousins. And considering I was told by sources,
My sources
told me that the Wilfs said the same thing that you just said, which is we need a substantial upgrade then, Rick. And Rick's like, and then the Wilfs were like, you are not going to trade him. Which by the way, I defended sort of at the time because we talked about this and I defended it on this. The Wilfs basically told Rick, I thought, I might have been wrong now, that you signed Kirk. You signed Kirk to an extension at that time in March of 2020. And now you're trying to trade Kirk. This is your baby. You and Mike go win. And I was like, okay, I sort of get that one because you're going to hold their feet to the fire with the consequence being exactly what played out. If you don't live up to expectations, you're both fired. But if the Wilfs are now saying this to their new GM, I absolutely find it despicable, deplorable. Yeah. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Then what are you doing? Why did you hire? Like I always gave the Wilfs a ton of credit when I covered that team because for the most part, my instinct was they do not overstep their boundaries. And we've talked about that. And I think I was right at the time. But if they are now quashing a new GM, trading a guy that the former GM signed and who, by the way, his fault or not, it's been a failure, then I find it to be very, very troublesome.
It's really interesting, man. It's yeah. And again, these are just some of the whispers and the rumblings that we're hearing here. Some of the, I don't know if I'd call it reckless speculation. It's educated.
Reckless speculation.
Educated speculation.
What's that? I hear some whispers.
Oh, that's Livia saying, Judd, you're down 40 pounds. Tell the audience how.
Oh, and I'm going to do that at full voice because I like to sing it from the mountaintop that I was once about 240 pounds. And now this past Thursday, I was down to 203. And now you're saying, Judd, how did you do it? And Phil whispered it, but I will sing it. I will say it is the folks from Livia Weight Control Centers who have helped me. And they want to help you too with their, I did an 8-week challenge where you get your first 8 weeks for free. That's right. You talk about a deal. First 8 weeks for free. And that time I lost 26 pounds. 855 go LIVEA, Livia.com, LIVEA.com, in town or out of town, because Zoom consultations that they can send the food to you. So if you are a Purple Daily fan in Florida, New York, California, Texas, I don't care where, but you're feeling like Judd's lost weight, and if he can do it, I can do it. Livia.com gets you started and keeps the weight off.
And then think how much better you'll look on that Dennis Kirk purchased motorcycle. If you like to ride out there, you can support our friends at Dennis Kirk who've been supporters of us, Mackie and Judd, Score North Purple Daily for a number of years. And riding season's on the horizon. That's right. You know, baseball's around the corner, riding season.
That's right.
And if you're gearing up for spring riding season, you got that itch to hit the road. Make sure you and your motorcycle are ready with Dennis Kirk. 160,000 parts in stock. Show us your bike. Show us your ride. If you like to ride, show us your ride.
I like it.
So we can show Dennis Kirk. That's right. Free shipping on orders over $89.
Can I say, because we've talked about Dennis Kirk before on the show, they've been a proud sponsor of both programs, Mackie, Judd, Purple Daily. I am built for the sidecar on a motorcycle. So if anyone gets the sidecar, I am made to be that guy. Hey, go get him. I got the little goggles on. That I am made for that. So I want to be the sidecar guy in a motorcycle.
How could you not want Declan in your sidecar? Just slinging takes and putting clickbait social media headlines up on behalf of you.
Takes.
So DennisKirk.com if you want to hit that open road and also support the show here. So we are, as we record this, the legal tampering period has opened up across the NFL. I love how Alex Kappa was the Bucks free agent guard. He literally agreed within 30 seconds of 11 o'clock a.m. to a 4-year, $40 million contract with the Bengals. So clearly that conversation hadn't started early.
Dude, it's so great. I love this part. There was no tampering before the legal tampering period, right? Oh, no. We just talked within a couple of minutes and got the deal done.
I mean, why don't they just open up and say, yeah, I mean,
why isn't
it once the combine hits,
exactly,
you guys can talk to each other. You can't agree to any deals, but like you can talk to each other.
Or agree, just don't sign them. Like who cares?
It's super weird.
Like if you're gonna leave, you're going to leave.
Yeah. It's super weird. I really, the Vikings have a lot of work to do still to get under the cap. There's some restructures. They're going to figure out Danielle Hunter. So there's still a lot of things to be done here. But when it's all said and done, I think the top 2 targets for them should be either Brandon Scherf, who I have heard would love to play for the Vikings, be closer to his family, his wife's family in Iowa, 30 years old. He's probably going to be the most expensive offensive lineman currently on the market. Now that Ryan Jensen is gone, he's the center of he went back to Tampa. Brandon Scherf's going to command like $15+ million a year.
Yeah.
And if it's not him, it's got to be 26-year-old Austin Corbett, who has thrived the last 2 years with Kevin O'Connell as an offensive coordinator in Sean McVay's system. So just forget about this Oli Udo, Drew Samia, this just
I think that's dead.
Conveyor belt of crap at guard. Just get a real professional actual guard. And I would add center to that mix too, but there's more guards in this free agent market than there are centers. So fix it.
I think the one thing that you have to do without question now is you have to give you have to do what we've joked about for 3 years now. You have to give Kirk as perfect of conditions as possible, right? Like if you're back in, you just dove back into the pool. You need to put some really, really good chlorine in that pool to keep that sucker clean. And that is what? An offensive line. Yeah. So unless you think, and I don't think that we know enough from the Viking standpoint to say this. Unless you thought Wyatt Davis can step in now day one after not playing at all last year at right guard, which I don't think is a realistic expectation. Guard and center are both incredibly important, right? I mean, Garrett Bradbury's a bust.
Yeah, you have to acknowledge that.
Exactly. Let's quit with this. Well, and I have said this, but it's just not right. If we get the right guard, then Bradbury, no, he's a bust. And Kirk Cousins, you now have to provide him with an infrastructure that literally gives him no outs if it fails. So like there's no more, well, the pass rush was a problem, or there's no more, take your pick of excuses. The only thing that means is that he can't then rely on the defense's problems as his excuse. You have to outscore teams. That's my big thing.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to build the perfect roster. I mean, hell, even look at the Super Bowl teams. The Rams didn't have a perfect defense. No. The Rams got leaky at times. They had Aaron Donald up front, which was helpful. But, the Bengals got to the Super Bowl with no offensive line, and their defense was not among the top 5 defenses in the NFL. So you're not going to have a perfect roster. But I think where Kirk has an argument and the Cousins Crusaders, if you will, have an argument is they never have answered that question of what would he really look like behind a top even 10 or 15 offensive line, because they've never given it to him. So it is the one big remaining sort of what if, and if they don't address that what if in the next 2 or 3 weeks of free agency and then maybe the draft, then I give up, I guess.
But are you going to do the same thing then?
No, they're going to fix the offensive line.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
They're going to fix the offensive line.
They have to.
But the defense is going to be leaky almost certainly. I think you're going to have to, as a result.
I think you are going to have to say at the start of training camp, we are hopefully going to be competent on defense, but we might have to score 35 points in X amount of games.
Yeah. Well, they were 14th in scoring last year. So, and this is where people the offense was not one of the best offenses in the NFL. They led the league in 3 and outs.
But that's because
they were 14th in points per game. Right. Okay, so let's get Zimmer out of here. Get Clint Kubiak, who'd never done this before. Get him out of here. Fix the offensive line. Get some real professionals in offensively, and let's see what happens. And that's what they have decided to do.
Yep.
And all the while trying to fix the defense on the fly with potentially a new scheme. It's it's exciting. It's all right. Let's do it. Let's go. Like we're back at it again.
time.
It's just a lot to bite off and try and fix all of these things in one off season. Even with bringing Kirk's cap hit down, it wasn't like you cleared $40 million. Like you cleared 15, which is enough to get you cap compliant almost.
Yep.
So there's more moves to be made. We'll see what happens. Remember, for some of the moves that they make, you might be losing players. Like you can say goodbye to Michael Pierce, but now you might need another defensive lineman. So really curious to see what happens the rest of this week.
Wow. And do you make so here's a question too, based on the fact that it looks like this team is definitely going to try and win right now. Do you also consider going forward trades that trade high draft picks for the short term?
Wow.
I will go back to this in 2019. I will stand by this until I am in the ground. Hopefully, but by then there is a Lombardi Trophy in TCO. But I will stand by the fact that the 2019 Vikings should have traded for Jalen Ramsey.
Who's the Jalen Ramsey right now?
That's what I'm saying. I don't even know. But my point is, like, what I want commitment. And I feel like we always got this. I'm in the middle here. I got Cousins, but I'm not going to do this.
We're going to bring Cousins in, but then we're going to hoard draft picks and select 38 players over 3 years, right? Or we're going to draft 11 players in last year's draft. Well, if you're not going to use those guys, trade those draft picks for players that could start for you, right?
And fans will say, well, but the Rams have no picks left. They're screwed. And I guess the comeback is, yeah, but they've got a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, they don't care. Yeah.
Right. So if you've got one, if the 2019 Vikings had gone out and gotten Jalen Ramsey and solidified a secondary, and then you might have a chance against San Fran.
Yeah.
The point being is, if you had got a championship from that, and right now the Vikings had a dearth of draft picks, would we be on this show saying, oh man, they got no draft picks, or saying, oh yeah, but they got a Super Bowl?
Right. And I want to say one more thing here too, because I think I hear the pushback from, we did an episode last night reacting to this, and we said this exact thing, which is, oh, when you sign up for 2 more years of Kirk Cousins, even with a slightly reduced cap hit, I mean, he still has the 6th highest cap hit in the NFL. Like this is a win now move. Like this is something that I think Pat just burst in. This is something that you're doing to win games at a high level this year and next year. You're trying to win Super Bowls.
Yep.
And so you're foregoing a reset year to try and keep pushing forward. And a lot of people have said, well, I mean, you can't say that. The roster's not Super Bowl ready right now. Well, no, not right now. But if you feel like the roster is multiple years away from being Super Bowl ready, then why would you lock into 2 more years of Cousins if perhaps other teams, maybe like Cleveland,
right,
were offering you a couple second-round picks and cap relief? You know? Why would you turn that down? Because it expedites your chances to load up on good, young, cheap players for a window that starts in 2023. They said no to that opportunity to put more chips on the 2022 and 2023 table. And so they should be judged with a high bar. You don't do this and then say, okay, but the bar is 8 wins. No, the bar needs to be compete for the division and get deep into the playoffs and make some noise. Like why would you shy away from that expectation after re-signing Kirk to that contract extension? That's my question.
And so what's the path? Is there a path here now? Like, because if you try and do the dual paths, we've seen that.
Yeah, you got to commit.
So
I kind of love what you said. Listen, if you're in, okay, trade a first-round pick for now. The cap, like if you trade a first-round pick for a veteran, what's their cap hit? Like, there's so many things to untangle here, but the main assets that I think they're going to wind up, I mean, they're going to clear space. I don't know how they're going to do it yet. You know, they're going to restructure a couple contracts. They're going to say goodbye to a Michael Pierce or something. And so they're going to wind up probably, let's say, $30 million under the cap whenever they want to be at some point this week. So I think they can sign 2 or 3 impact free agents. I think they can sign a really good offensive lineman. They can probably like bring back a Patrick Peterson or sign a cornerback. There's probably, before you get to the real deep bargain bin area, there's probably 3 guys you can land in free agency. You need 2 offensive linemen for sure, minimum. You need at least another linebacker because Barr's not on the team, and you need 2 starting cornerbacks. That's 5 right there that you need bare minimum to try and compete with the Packers and with the Rams and with the 49ers and with the Buccaneers now with Tom Brady. If you can nail 3 of them in free agency without whiffing, okay, you got a first-round pick, you got a second-round pick. Maybe Wyatt Davis is ready to play. Like that's something else. But
you know that
you got kind of a thin margin here. But I think if you nail 3 free agents, and you nail a ready-made, let's say starting cornerback day 1 with that 12th overall pick, okay, but you got to go like 4 for 4 or 5 for 5. You don't get the leeway of we whiffed on Bashad Breeland, or oh man, Garrett Bradbury kind of a bust. Like those guys have to be turnkey, ready to rock week 1 in 2022.
So do you then subsequently off of that try and trade your first round pick for a cornerback who is on the market, who is first round worthy potentially?
The thing is, I don't know that you even with some of the reworking here, are you going to have enough cap space to sign 3 free agents and then trade a first round pick for another established player that has a cap hit? Like, this is where money starts to become a problem.
Absolutely.
And some of the dead money they have tied up in some of these players.
You just can't, as we learned from Rick especially, you cannot consistently serve 2 masters. You can't serve the future. I'm going for the future, but right now I'm trying to win. To win a championship, it's my opinion that you need to go all in.
This is fun. This is just kind of the Steelers have a new quarterback. Who do you think it is, Judd? Who's the Steelers' new quarterback?
Oh, it's going to be totally underwhelming from how you're acting. All
it's not Jimmy G.
All condescending. And is Tyrod Taylor out there?
He's out there, but he's not the Steelers' new quarterback.
I don't know. I could guess all day.
Mitchell Trubisky.
He might get a chance to start there. That's going to be that'll be a hoot in Pittsburgh.
According to Ian, so they'll probably bring in Mitch Trubisky, draft Malik Willis or
here. Okay. I would advise if I worked for Mitch. Here's what I would advise, because first of all, I don't know if he can play or not. I've got my doubts, but I would have said, Mitch, we're going to find you a team, low intensity fan base, not the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Carolina
Those people.
Panthers.
Yes, the Steelers fans go to training camp and will boo his ass.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly, Dex. Carolina, or is there a West Coast team I can stick him on where he can just, I don't know. Pittsburgh seems like a bad place.
Every picture of Mitch Trubisky is him like rolling out to the right and cutting off half the field.
Yep.
And looking frustrated. He always looks frustrated.
Oh, man. All right. Just to put a wrap on this here, this is kind of the post-mortem. Kirk Cousins has signed. You are all committing your lives as Vikings fans to 2 more years of Kirk Cousins, Mr. Game-winning drive, the 2-minute Terminator himself.
Here we go. Phil's back.
What are your final thoughts for now, anyways, on this contract extension?
I'm surprised by the path. I thought that the Vikings had a mulligan in which to reset, and again, this is not me ripping Kirk. It's a choice. They've made a choice that they feel that they can be ultra competitive. And if ownership indeed told the general manager, well, if you're not going to make a trade that's going to make us substantially better right now, or if they interfered in any way, shame on them. Because I've always respected the Wilfs for not doing that. And it feels like they're getting more and more involved at times. And that's not their job. Their job is to hire people who can give them guidance on the best football moves possible.
Yeah. What about you, Dex? Final thoughts on this for now?
He's our quarterback. I like that. That's where I'm at. He's my quarterback now for 2 years.
That was said with zero enthusiasm.
Arranged marriage. That's what this is.
20 points, man. You gave us a
marriage.
chance at the end, but I got 3 words for
Yeah.
you. You like that?
Vikings want a Super Bowl. Some people want a family. Arranged marriage. Can we make a kid? I don't know.
I think my final thought is I'm not going to beat this horse to death going forward here. Just know that my underlying skepticism remains, and it will remain for the next 2 years. however much money he makes. Like the money is the biggest issue, and it's a lesser issue now than it was yesterday. But I have major questions about his ability as a leader, as an improviser when needed, to really be that dude that can take the Vikings where they've never been as a franchise. So, like, that skepticism will remain, but my personal discussions on this show will be much more centered toward, all right, this is the choice they've made.
Yep.
How can they make the best of this? What's the best path to fortifying Kirk's existence on this team in the best possible way? A lot of people are saying, well, that's what you guys should have been hammering all on. Well, he was plopped into a Ferrari in 2018, okay? The offensive line wasn't perfect, but, like, they missed the playoffs. So, like, the skepticism will remain under the surface, but I will turn my attention from incessantly ripping Kirk Cousins and the Vikings for this decision to how can they make the best of it. I'm going to slip a couple times. You guys are going to have to call me.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first bad relapses. The first bad game. In fact, you know what, Phil Mackey? when things go wrong the first time.
No, once the games start, all bets are off. Because now, we're talking about your performance on the field again.
If things go wrong, though, I'm going to give you one suggestion, Phil.
Thank you.
And that is that you go pick up the first Surly Variety Pack of 2022. That's right, exactly. Free agency. It started long ago in beer, and the number one choice everyone should pursue is an offensive line, a complete pack, and that is a variety pack that includes Havoc Machine. It includes the delicious Ghost Empire Dark Lager. It includes, of course, the Bell Cow Surly Furious and the hyper-modern Idaho 7 IPA, which is the gem of this pack, Surly Brewing.
Boom. All right. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. That's really what it's all about here on Purple Daily. So, if you listen, our DMs are open except for Judd's, and our inbox is open on the Score North app. If you want to rub it in our faces like all these other people have, come at us.
You lose, Mackie.
Come at us.
You lose, Declan. You guys lost last night. You guys lost bad.
Amazing.
I love that.
All right. We'll see you guys later. Probably later today, quite frankly.